At my sister's engagement party, my mother laughed and said, "You'll never have a night like this. You've always been the disappointment." Everyone smiled at my humiliation, but they had no idea I'd already made one phone call that changed everything forever. The shining star had always been my sister. A perfect boyfriend, flawless grades, and the ideal position at a prestigious law firm. I was the one who failed to graduate from college twice, switched jobs frequently, and despite my best efforts, always managed to disappoint everyone. I was watching my sister pose for what must have been the 100th photo of the evening while standing near the dessert table. That was the moment that changed everything. I'd grown accustomed to my mother's approach with that familiar expression of barely concealed disdain. She turned to look at my sister and then at me before breaking into a loud, almost cruel chuckle that drew the attention of guests in the area. She assured me that I was always the family's disappointment and that I would never experience a night like this. I was struck hard by the words. However, the fact that everyone in our immediate vicinity simply smiled and nodded along, as if my public humiliation were a part of the evening's entertainment, made the situation even worse. I too laughed. I needed to. I didn't have any other options at that point. But something cold settled in my chest as I forced that laugh. I had served as the family's scapegoat for 32 years, the one whom everyone could blame whenever they needed to feel better about themselves. Tonight, something finally snapped inside of me. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, picking up my phone with surprising control in my hands. I searched through my contact list until I discovered the number I had hoped to never use. Before pressing the call button, my finger briefly hovered over it. I informed him that it was time when he answered on the second ring. It's time to talk about what I found 6 months ago, but had kept quiet about in the hope that my family would change and finally see me as more than just a failure. The conversation was professional and brief. Everything would be different by Monday morning. You see, even though my family thought I was a disappointment, they didn't pay attention to what I actually did for work. They assumed that I was still the same idiot I had been in my 20s, switching jobs and making poor choices. They had no idea that I had been working as a private investigator for the past 5 years and had developed a reputation for finding things that people desperately wanted to keep a secret. 6 months ago, a woman hired me because she thought her husband was having an affair. As is typical, earning good money ought to be simple. However, when I began following the husband, I discovered something that shook my entire being. The man had more than just an affair. He was seeing my sister in an affair. I spent 3 hours in my car outside that downtown hotel, watching them through the restaurant window and then following them upstairs. I had photos, timestamps, and credit card receipts. Everything I needed to show that my ideal sister had been sleeping with a married man for more than a year while planning her engagement to her boyfriend, who didn't know about it. But I kept quiet. I hoped, in part, that she would open up on her own and that maybe this was just a phase she would work through. I told myself that ruining her life would not improve mine. I convinced myself that I was acting larger than life. All of that changed tonight. The wife who had hired me 6 months earlier was my client, so I called her. I had been dragging my feet and making excuse after excuse as to why I needed more time to gather evidence. However, I informed her that everything was prepared tonight. I would send her the entire file via email on Monday morning. I went back to the party, where I spent the rest of the evening watching my sister dance with her fiancé, her champagne-soaked face glowing. Throughout the night, my mother continued to make subtle remarks about me, each one sharper than the last. Dad occasionally joined in, asking me when I planned to get my life together and making jokes about my career choices. As I counted down the hours until Monday, I simply smiled and nodded. Change 1. Unseasonable rain fell on Monday morning. I sent the email, a detailed report, and a flash drive containing all the evidence at precisely 9 a.m. I included photographs, video, hotel receipts, and a timeline that clearly depicted my sister's dual life. Within an hour, my customer contacted me. She thanked me even though she was crying. She had been thinking about it for months, but seeing the evidence was both devastating and liberating. She asked me if I would be willing to testify in court. I concurred. On Wednesday, the first cracks began to appear. It was unusual for my sister to call me because we rarely spoke except when forced to at family gatherings. She asked frantically if anyone had contacted her or been asking questions about her. As a good brother should, I spoke casually and with concern when I said no to her. My mother called that evening. It appeared that unidentified materials had been delivered to the fiancé of my sister. Documents, photos, and other items that portrayed my sister in a very unflattering light. The wedding didn't happen. My sister's heartbroken. My mother wanted to know if I knew who might harm our family in such a terrible way. I told her that no one could possibly be so cruel. I didn't miss the beautiful irony. My family had treated me like I was invisible and incompetent enough to not be a threat for years. They hadn't bothered to find out what I actually did for a living. Never paid any attention to my life other than letting me know how disappointed they were in me. They might have realized that hiring someone in my field to investigate your affair was probably not the best decision if they had paid attention and shown even the smallest amount of curiosity about my professional background. Second update. The consequences were severe and quick. The fiancé of my sister did not simply break up with her quietly. He made it clear to everyone in their social circle why. The story quickly spread among their circle of friends. My sister, whose entire identity was based on being perfect, was suddenly the focus of rumors and scandal. However, that was only the beginning. She had been seeing a married man, and his wife did more than just file for divorce. Because she was a successful businesswoman with connections, she ensured that the affair was made public as soon as possible. She disguised the story as one about professional ethics when she leaked it to local media outlets. After all, my sister had connected with her lover at work. One of the city's most prestigious law firms, my sister's, couldn't ignore the bad press. Although they did not fire her right away, they made it abundantly clear that her partnership path had been permanently derailed. The office whispers, sideways glances, and sudden exclusion from crucial cases, all of it came together to create a hostile workplace that eventually forced her to leave. My parents were working hard to minimize the damage. After years of praising my sister's accomplishments to anyone who would listen, my mother suddenly found herself justifying the sudden cancellation of the wedding to friends and neighbors. The most satisfying part was watching my father, who had always taken great pride in being a good character judge, struggle to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the woman the evidence showed she was. Again, my mother called me, this time crying. She inquired as to whether or not I knew of anyone who might be able to alleviate the situation. I had never before heard her voice sound so desperate. She was approaching me for assistance instead of lecturing me about my failures for the first time in my life. Knowing full well that there was nothing I could or would do, I told her I would investigate. Update 3. My sister showed up at my apartment 3 weeks after the engagement party. Even though I was surprised that it took her this long, I had been expecting this visit. She appeared to be 5 years, 3 weeks old. I could tell she had been crying because her normally flawless hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail. I let her in because she asked if we could talk. She sat on my couch and completely broke down, telling me how her entire life had fallen apart and how she couldn't figure out how everything had happened so quickly. She then asked me if I thought this was karma, if maybe she deserved what was happening to her. As she looked at me desperate, she stated that she had been reflecting on the numerous instances in which she had participated in our parents' criticism of me and acted as though she was superior to me. I almost felt sorry for her for a split second, but then I thought about the party for the engagement. I recalled how I had been treated as the family's failure for 32 years. I recalled every snide comment, every disappointed look, and every time I was made to feel inferior to the other people in the room. I advised her that life can take unexpected turns at times. I suggested that this might be an opportunity for her to start over and construct something real rather than the perfect facade she had been presenting. I even offered to assist her in finding a new job by utilizing my connections to provide her with a fresh start. She gave me a big hug and thanked me, describing me as the only member of her family who had truly cared about her. The irony was almost unbearable. Last update. The engagement party that changed everything has been 6 months since. My sister ended up getting a job in a different state, so she basically started over. She endured the scandal for some time, but she is gradually regaining her confidence and reputation. Some uncomfortable facts about their golden child and, by extension, Their treatment of me over the years have forced my parents to face up to. Last month, my mother actually offered an apology to me, acknowledging that they had been unfair and that perhaps they had never really given me a chance to succeed. Although it was insufficient and too late, I graciously accepted the apology. The married man went through a divorce that cost him everything and left him with his own professional problems. After receiving a favorable settlement, his wife has established a non-profit organization to assist women who have been betrayed by unfaithful partners. My business has never been better for me. The thoroughness of my investigation became known, and I have had more clients than I can handle. I'm considering expanding and possibly hiring an assistant. The most odd thing about it all is that I don't feel as satisfied as I thought I would. I didn't feel better about my own life after watching my sisters fall apart. Years of hurt and disappointment remained. It just made me realize that seeking vengeance at the expense of loved ones is a hollow victory. However, it did instruct my family on the importance of not underestimating others. They found out that the family dissatisfaction they had previously dismissed was far more capable than they had ever imagined. They learned that pretending that someone is invisible does not render them powerless. Sometimes all it does is make them risky. Most importantly, they gained knowledge of the consequences of their words. That unintentional cruelty that is delivered with a grin and a chuckle can fester and develop into something much more sinister. Despite the fact that the dynamic has completely changed, I still attend family gatherings. There are no more jokes about my career. No one questions my choices in life or treats me like a failure in the family. Their interactions with me now reflect a new weariness, as well as a cautious respect that was previously absent. I occasionally observe my mother looking at me with something that could be fear. In addition, I have to wonder if she has finally come to the realization that the quiet son she had shunned for so many years had been paying attention all along, jotting down every insult, every instance of casual cruelty, and every slight. The truth is that if I had wanted to, I could have destroyed them all. The investigation into my sister revealed additional family secrets and vulnerabilities that could have been exploited. However, because the lesson was sufficiently conveyed, I decided to concentrate on her. Now that I'm out there, my family knows that I'm not the pleasant disappointment they thought I was. They are aware that underestimating someone for 32 years can have unexpected effects. Additionally, they are aware that sometimes the person with all the cards is the one you least expect. Everything between us has been altered by that knowledge. And honestly, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but it has taught them to think twice before laughing at someone else. They had no idea that a single phone call would alter everything the night of that engagement party. But I did, and that made all the difference.